According to UNWTO findings of December 2021, more than 85 countries have already eased travel restrictions for fully vaccinated international tourists. There has been some uplift in the global demand in 2021, coinciding with the summer holidays in the Northern Hemisphere. However, international arrivals for 2021 are still expected to remain 70% to 75% below the 2019 levels. The trend of the first 9 months of 2021 is likely to continue, with international arrivals 20% lower than last year and 76% below 2019. So the Middle East and the United Arab Emirates, for instance, recorded 82% and 69% drops, respectively, compared to 2019. Despite the slowdown, the tourism industry has also shown its resilience and leadership in cooperating with governments and civil society to build back better. So decision makers have now realized that inclusion, equality, and human rights need to be on top of our agendas. No one should be left behind. So why accessibility? UNWTO has always stood up for everyone's right to tourism without obstacles. During the pandemic, we conveyed messages on reopening tourism without placing unnecessary barriers for travel with specific access requirements. Universal accessibility in tourism is about human rights and access of all people to tourism infrastructure, products, and services. We all have different abilities, and it is our duty and the duty of our sector to cater for our requirements. It is a moral and often a legal obligation to ensure everyone's right to leisure and tourism. Accessible tourism is about millions of users. More than 15% of the world population lives with some form of disability. And most of us are likely to develop specific access requirements throughout our lives due to longer life expectancy, and health conditions. So the number of end users of accessible tourism is constantly growing in developed and in emerging economies alike. By 2050, 1 out of 6 people will be aged 65 years or more, while in Europe and in North America, this figure may reach 25% of the population. This means 1 out of 4 persons. So globally, almost half of the persons aged over 60 have already some disabilities. Accessibility concerns the whole tourism value chain. Adapting, for example, a hotel and having no allergy-free menu or accessible local transportation to the airport disrupts a tourism experience. It causes discomfort and frustration to the tourist. So why is accessibility good for people and good for business? Accessible tourism for all is a major business opportunity. Accessible destinations and businesses are tapping into an immense market potential and becoming more competitive. Tourists with disabilities tend to travel accompanied by 2 or 3 persons. This consumer behavior reduces seasonality and increases revenue performance for the whole value chain. In many regions, persons with access requirements and seniors have time and resources to travel. The potential market in the European Union, for example, is more than 80 million people, reaching as much as 130 million if we add seniors and accompanying persons. Moreover, 70% of people with disabilities in the European Union do have financial and physical capabilities to travel. Accessibility benefits both local population and visitors. It improves the overall quality of life, especially for local communities, as tourists come and go. Yet opening up to visitors with disabilities positions tourism businesses on new markets as they expand their outreach. Nevertheless, accessibility still needs a common global guidance. Different tourism destinations and companies keep applying different concepts, measures, and different dimensions when stating their accessibility. This makes the travel planning rather complicated for tourists and causes a higher cancellation rate. So service providers, therefore, need to speak the same language when assessing and upgrading their accessibility features. They require guidance and guidance tools that enable customers to understand the offer on accessible products and experiences. They don't need necessarily labels stating, I comply with accessibility. So which solutions does UNWTO suggest? Well, UNWTO has always been convinced that an international comprehensive standard would bridge the pending obstacles. We felt that it was urgent to put forward recommendations for national tourism administrations, for destination management organizations and service providers to facilitate policymaking and strategic actions in the sphere of accessibility. We thought that we had to go one level higher than the already published a series of UNWTO technical manuals and guidelines. So UNWTO joined hands in 2016 with the ONCE Foundation in Spain and the Spanish Association for Standardization, UNE, to develop such an instrument at the global level. And we submitted a proposal in this sense to the International Standardization Organization, ISO, in Geneva. So our organization, UNWTO, assumed the role of convener of the expert working group in charge of elaborating the new international ISO standard on accessible tourism. UNWTO's main role was to ensure a multi-sectoral consensus between 85 experts from 35 countries, representing a wide range of interests in the tourism sector. The adoption of the standard and the accessibility itself is about joint efforts of the public and the private sector, of destinations, trade associations, and of course, consumers, advocates, and disabled people's organizations. They bring in altogether pieces of a seamless travel experience. So we are pleased that upon UNWTO's proposal and in collaboration with our member state, Portugal, we were able to include in the new standard a set of recommendations addressed to public administrations also. This represents a novelty in ISO as opposed to its traditional focus on private sector service providers. So the publication of the standard in July 2021, after 4 years of arduous work, also fully coincided with the tourism recovery process. So UNWTO and its partners launched 2 sets of inclusive recovery guides to reopen tourism without imposing unnecessary obstacles for visitors with disabilities. We were aware that with the new health protocols, and the new health protocols would make travel more challenging for those persons with access requirements. Therefore, we further suggested solutions for designing specific policy and strategic measures to advance accessible tourism for all under these new circumstances. So putting in practice these UNWTO guidelines and the new ISO standard is a perfect match when it comes to designing an inclusive tourism recovery. Well, these tools can serve to embrace the wealth of human diversity and challenge the stereotypes, making us all feel equal and welcomed when enjoying travel and tourism. However, changing our mindset and understanding the business case of accessibility are still key challenges. That is why awareness raising and training at both executive and front desk levels are a must. Ensuring good accessibility is not a favor to tourists with access requirements, but rather a game changer for businesses determined to combat the pandemic effects. Every customer counts now. We should never forget that facilitating a good access is everybody's business and a win-win for all. It is good for people and it is good for tourism. And I hope that 2022 bring us all a more health and more opportunities to travel. With this, I finish my presentation. Thank you very much. Shukran. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marina.